Thank you, Lucas. It's an honor to be here and present you with the challenge, because I've been asked to tell you that you can make a difference and you can do it together with InnoEnergy. So this is about creating our future. Let's face it, this is where we're coming from. It took it 100 years to build the global energy system. And you can see on the bottom there, we started using bioenergy, then came the coal, then came the oil, hydro, gas, and in the very last part of this graph, you see the renewable energy coming in. So I would like to show the picture because to understand that the system we are going to replace was built over 100 years. Now our task is much, much tougher. This is one study that was conducted by Stanford University, published a few months ago, that showed that they have looked at 139 different countries and concluded that it is indeed possible to build a 100% renewable energy system in 139 countries that they studied. And what you see also on the time scale I would like to address to you, because basically this could be done in 20 years. In 20 years, which is of course an enormous challenge compared to the 100. What they also shown is that on the top you see that by electrifying the system you use less energy. Actually 23% reduction is from electrification. You have also another 12% is from avoided energy just to extract the oil and the gas. That's, by the way, something that is quite often forgot about. It takes energy to just get it out of the ground and refine it. And then end-use efficiency. In their scenario, they have looked at PV, residential and utility, in the bottom, and wind. So basically, it's a system with wind and solar. But I will come to that. It's not enough with wind and solar. You need something else. So let's take us through, how possible is this? I will take the example of Sweden, because for the 100 years, Sweden went basically from a society for 100% bioenergy to a society based on coal. That took 100 years. Another 70 years, we actually introduced oil in the system. And we went to hydraulic energy and oil, and phased out the coal. I think that Sweden was one of the first countries in the world that actually phased out coal completely, almost completely. We still have it, but only for industrial processes. So what happened after 1970? That was around when I started being active. So you can see what I achieved and my colleagues. Actually, in less than 20 years, we transformed the energy system completely. And what happened was that there was a massive deployment of electricity by nuclear power, a massive deployment of bioenergy. So basically in less than 20 years, there was a complete transformation and the oil consumption was, for instance, cut in half. A result of this was also that if you look at CO2 emissions, the top graph is the global CO2 emissions, and the bottom graph is the CO2 emissions in Sweden. And you see around about 1970, this curve broke down. And since that, the CO2 emissions have been cut in half. This is very impressive. The only problem is not enough. The challenge we have now is to bring it to zero in a shorter time. But at least it shows that you can do things in a short time. There is one challenge now, and I talked about if you have 100% renewables, we have one major challenge, and that is on the supply side, which you see to the left there. We have, or actually on the supply side, we have increased variation in the production. It's weather dependent, but we also have an increased fluctuation in the demand. And that comes from the fact that we have, on one hand, more efficient equipment that uses less. Minimum load goes down. We are going to charge electric cars, so maximum consumption goes up. To balance this, we have a number of different options. We can do it by energy efficiency services. We can have demand response. We can have flexible production. We can have storage, and we can have import-export. And I will for now concentrate, since I'm thematic leader for smart grid and storage, on the storage part. What can we do with the storage part and how can we make a difference? As a matter of fact, this very complicated graph, you shouldn't look at it all, but it tells you that within the entity we have actually 12 startups and 9 projects, all related to storage. So we have projects and companies working for, on the blue side you see that it's grid storage, home storage, off-grid, transport and consumer. And on the top side we have different carriers. We have electricity, we have electrochemical, we have thermal, chemical and mechanical. So not completely, but we are, I would say, all over the field in terms of different storage technologies. And I will then also narrow it down to a few of them to show that I think we can make a difference. This is one message I have to you. You have to start challenge the as-is situation. And one of the traditional ways to do things, I was working for 35 years building grids. And building grids is one way to balance the system because you can shift the load actually over wires or cables. Today in Stockholm is a great example. We are spending about 4 billion Swedish crowns every year to reinforce the grid in Stockholm. And the consequence of that is that the grid tariff today in Sweden is higher than the cost of energy. So electricity itself is cheaper than the grid. And of course, I don't believe that this is a way we can continue. There must be another way to do it. And in that context, we have within CommUnity conducted a study where we looked at what if we start using batteries to actually smoothen out the fluctuations instead of using more grids. And to the top graph here, you see that the red, that is a typical variation in a home in Sweden. The blue is the variation if you include a battery. And the battery takes the peaks out of the system. And the results are quite astonishing. It actually shows that by adding just 1 kilowatt hour on average per apartment in Stockholm, we can cut the peak by 40%. Actually, if you add 3 kilowatt hours, you can cut the peak by 80%. And this is, of course, a dramatic way to solve the problem without building more grids. There are a few hang-ups, for instance, in that distribution companies are not today allowed to own storage. Someone else has to do it. But there again, I would say regulation changes cannot stop us from doing things because regulation can be changed. You can even change laws if required. So the consequence of this is that you will see a hockey stick effect in the use of batteries in the power system. And this hockey stick will actually happen shortly after year 2020. I was having a speech of this in Barcelona, and then people who are not so familiar with hockey sticks there. But you know how they look. It goes rapidly up there. Then, so in terms of then electrochemical electrical storage, we have this is one of the startups we have that is very promising. It's a company in Estonia called Skeleton. They make supercaps, which is one storage that is very fast, can be charged over 1 million times, and has an incredibly high power capacity. The downside is that the energy capacity is not so high, and also that the cost so far has been very high. This company we have helped now to build a new factory in Germany, and they have just started producing. And I think one of the things, this is a CEO of the company, that he claims that by having CommUnity as a partner, they could add credibility, so they were able actually to round up financing from, for instance, European Investment Bank. And it will be very interesting to follow this company. It's certainly one of the more promising we have. We have also one more, and later today we hear Anton. He is working on another startup company. But it's a very unusual startup company because they are planning to build a very, very large battery factory in Sweden. We started working with Northvolt very early, even before they were called Northvolt. And I think they have gained tremendous momentum. Same there, I believe we have helped with credibility. And I think also recently they have also announced that they are going together with ABB, which is quite a big achievement. I think Anton was very much involved. You can ask me in the break how we did that. Another message for you is that there is so much talk about the bell curve. And you can see the bell curve in all literature. They say, well, the bell curve is you have early adopters, you have early majority, late majority, you have laggards. The problem is that increasingly you see that that bell curve is not valid at all, because the breakthrough comes much, much faster and much more dramatic. You see something that you see on the red curve here, which is called the Big Bang market adoption, much faster. And that is something you have to realize, that don't believe people that talk about the bell curve. The bell curve can be fine, but it's not valid for more dramatic changes in the market. And one example is this. It's a beautiful picture. It happened 100 years ago. This is the Fifth Avenue, year 1900. You see a lot of horse wagons. Can you see the car? Is there? It's one car in the picture. And same Fifth Avenue 13 years later, not 130, but 13 years later, is here. The question is, can you see the horse? Is there? Is one horse? So if things could happen, and this is a typical Big Bang adoption to the market, extremely fast penetration. So what will, if you try to translate that to today's situation, when will the Big Bang happen on the automotive market? Well, we all talk about electric cars, and people say, well, we can take it easy because they will never be as good as the conventional car. They will never be cost efficient and so forth. This is a quite interesting study from UBS that shows that up in the yellow field there, when will an electric car, if you look at the lifetime cost, be as cheap as a combustion car? In Europe it's 2018, next year. In US it's 2025. And why is that so? It's because gasoline is so cheap in US. It takes longer for the car to be competitive in US environment. The green field is more interesting. When will the electric car be cheaper to buy? Just the CapEx cost cheaper. That's 2023 in Europe. And think about it. 2023, you can buy an electric car that has a range of minimum 400 kilometers, same price as a fossil car. Those of you that want to buy a fossil car, raise your hands. I don't see them. This is when the Big Bang is going to happen. And remember the picture from 1913. 1913 is 2020. And the change will happen first in Europe. That's also interesting. This shows, again, the volume dependent, and also you see that the dark blue curve is the penetration of electric vehicles in Europe. So Europe will be the leading market for electric vehicles. There is only one small problem that Anton and his colleagues are working with. We have no battery production in Europe at all today. So to wrap up here, I think that when I work with CommUnity, I think that I'm quite impressed with the fact that it's a European organization that is supposed to be slow. I haven't seen a slow. I think it's reacting very fast. I also appreciate very much that CommUnity takes a broader picture on what we are doing. It's not only technology. I mean, I hope you have seen and you have brainwashed with this diamond we have here. So we look at technology, we look at societal factors, supply chains, market values and market models, and regulation. Don't forget regulation, and also human capital. So one example of this is that the next speaker who will come, he will perform live, Kenneth. He was in the media this summer, where he was bold to say that, well, the European battery strategy is formed in Stockholm. How could he say that? Well, the reason is that we were actually asked by the European Commission to help them to make a battery strategy. And this is an invitation letter that went out earlier this fall. And you see it's in CommUnity there we have inviting together with European Policy Strategy Center, which is a European think tank that is directly reporting to Juncker. So they asked CommUnity to help them with a battery strategy. We had a first meeting in September 14. The next meeting is actually October 11, Wednesday week. And I can say that it has been quite inspiring for us to see that we can actually help European industry to form a common agenda. And hopefully this will mean that we will also see a European battery strategy. So, to conclude, I think that the challenge that we have to transform the energy system is enormous. But I would say also that energy has for sure a role to play in this transformation. The response we have, of course, is the pioneering spirit. And we also have, are actually empowering research, enabling innovation. There is a lot of innovation going on, a lot of research, but we make it happen. And I think it's also we make it happen by bringing things to the market. And last but not least, we are creating the future system today. And this example I showed you again, I think we are the fast movers in believing that things can be done faster. And I think we're about to prove it in the battery case and in the storage case. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. Maybe I misunderstood a little bit. I mean, I will bring more general context here and not concrete examples. I think the concrete example was taken by Bo. But I'd like you to a little bit remember what Bo has said and see it as a tremendous challenge, but also tremendous opportunities. I will a little bit set the level on a very generic level and introduce energy as a concept, what kind of organization we have, and how that actually could support to solve the challenges and bring innovations to the market. How it works with its mission and vision. So that becomes a little bit of a high-level pitch, and I only have 10 minutes, so it's going to be the higher of the highest pitches, unfortunately. But if you want to know more about all the things we're doing, I encourage you to either grab my staff or grab myself, and I will explain more. First of all, our goal, reduce CO emissions. It's very concrete. Improve European competitiveness, remove barriers to innovation, and create jobs. Maybe this is the most concrete of all, because what we have a very market-driven approach in terms of creating jobs. And for jobs, you need what? You need business, right? And for business, you need to make money. And to make money, you need markets. It's very clear. So you start with the market, you can make money, and you can create business, and then we create jobs. That is sort of a red line through all the things we are doing. But we also have a concept on how to do it. This is something that represents something called knowledge triangle, and our concept is based on integrating that. And we've done it like taking the three corners, which is business, human capital, and technology and services, putting that into an input to an output-oriented organizations. Taking the three corners in a business line approach where we have education with students at input, we have innovation projects with research at input, entrepreneurs as input to business creations. And out comes graduates, where many of you here in the rooms are represented, products and services, and creative companies. These are the KPIs that we are measured on. It's a very concrete input-output oriented approach. And the machinery in the middle, that's Energy's engine. This is an organization that continues to deliver, it goes on. We've been doing that for 7 years now. So, with the help of tax money from European Union, we then have created this machinery, and what we have done so far, delivered a lot of results, and taking only this business line, we have invested 157 million euros so far. And as we go then to the other side, actually I should start here. We have invested 157 million here, spent money by investing in activity and projects. Then we go here take the market approach. Before actually investing, we make a market study, a business case, take a very development approach and try to develop something that's competitive on the market. So estimating the market, consolidating that, and all the products that we have run and invested in so far creates potential sales of 3 billion euros. That's only the business line here. Then, if I summarize the result that we received so far for all the business line, we have created 83 products and services, 3 manufacturing sites, 171 startups, and 95 company created. They have raised 55 million euros in external capital. We have created 494 students, 8 professional MOOCs, and 200 PhD candidates. So this is the aggregated result of this machinery since we started. And this is a measure on how much money we invest and how much money we will create. And remember, this money creates business and it creates jobs. So the logic is very, very simple. Bo mentioned this, and I think also it's worthwhile to mention that money is not everything, and business is also not everything. You need to work in all dimensions. And in this machinery I showed, we have activities in all these areas. Technology is very easy to understand. It's needed. You need to have something to sell. But there's much, much more to it than that to actually realize the business case. And this is all of these dimensions. I will not repeat what Bo said, but it's important to remember that you have to work in all these dimensions as a society. Behind us, we have a partnership-based organization. We are an own company, but we're also a network-based and membership-based company. With 25 main shareholders to that, we have roughly 250 additional partners from universities, research institutions, and industry. So these are the partners that has actually been part of the machinery to deliver these Spock wheels that I've shown, delivered all of these results. So it's not only Energy doing it, but there's a lot of more actors behind this. And this is what we then call our ecosystem, because this is based on cooperation and actually complementary cooperation across the value chain, across borders, and across people. This colorful picture is a way to explain the evolution of Energy as a company. Here again, you see the engine. This is the same part with the Spock wheels. We have the input side with students, entrepreneurs, and industry partners and academic partners. Working in the machinery, delivering the output, students, products and services, and companies. If you compare with a normal company, this would be the part where you invest and spend money. You're developing something to exploit on this side. And that's why it says revenue generation, because on this side, we spend and invest, and here we exploit, making the money. What we're doing within Energy, we have built quite an extensive organization here, but going forwards, until 2020, we will also build a very strong arm here to help these people, companies, and products and services to exploit their business case. It means in detail that a startup company here in Stockholm who are bringing their solution to the market might help to get out on the international market in Germany. So we will pick up the phone to our colleagues in Germany and say, hey, we have this very competitive startup. Can you help to find customers on the German market? That we will do with own people here. And the vice versa goes also for the same thing. A startup in Poland might be interested in the Swedish market, and we will help them to find customers. And by doing that, we will help them to realize, this was a problem here, their business case. And by doing that, we also help them to pay back money to us here. Because everything we do here, we have also an own interest in in them to succeed. And if they succeed, we take a little piece of the cake and reinvest in new activities here. So that was the high level, or the high level pitches of energy. There's much, much more behind that. But now it comes to the last part of my presentation. So given that there are challenges, opportunities in the energy transition, I think there are even endless opportunities here. And we exist. We have a machinery that works, we deliver, and we are evolving to the market side, as I described. Then I would like to finish my presentation with 2 questions. What do you think that we expect from the community? Any spontaneous reaction? I can answer that question, but I would like to leave it. And then, most important, what do you think you can do with us, together with us in the future? And remember what Bo said, remember this, and remember that we actually are here. We are in place. Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you, Kenneth. In my next part, I would like to attempt to answer those questions. So, what have we had until now? We had Bo framing the challenge for us. We had Kenneth introducing to us a high-level picture of how this challenge can be solved. What's next? Now it's about us. Now it's about you, the community. Why are we here today? Why are you here? We all are here for a reason. Those reasons might differ. But something, one way or the other, brought us here, and that is that we want to make a difference in the world. That's why we joined this event at the latest. That's why we made significant choices in life before. Because we believe that this challenge is doable. But we as individuals don't really have a chance at tackling this issue. Not alone. We can't do this alone. What we need is each other. We need a strong network of people that can actually drive change forward. We can unite together and do this, tackle this challenge. Let me ask you, do you think it's a technical problem that we're facing? Sustainable energy in the world? It's not a technical problem. Is it a problem of money? Money is a symptom, not the cause. What is the problem? What does it take to drive this challenge forward? It takes people. It takes people like you. And that's why you are here today. Part of the reason why you're here today. So, what is the community? The community is a part of InnoEnergy, yes. But we are more of that. We are a network of professionals and future professionals in the energy industry. We have a vision to promote sustainable energy and innovative spirit in the industry. We've got more than 1,500 members that are mostly concentrated in Europe, but some already spread around the world. I can't think of one big energy company in Europe where not at least one of you, one of us, is currently present. We got 5 of our members in the Forbes 30 under 30 list. Entrepreneurs, innovators. That's a benchmark. Who of you is going to be making the 6 here? We can do this. This is a sparkle of our members. These are the senior guys. These have been with us in the community for a few years. Most of you are fresh. By head count, most of you are students that just joined InnoEnergy and therefore joined the community, but you will be up there in a few years, no doubt about that. There you can start. And your story starts right here, right today with us. What do? This is a high-level community thing. We operate through events, sure, of course. We operate through programs. No problem. We connect with our members through the platform. These are all tools. This is not the essence. But what is the essence? The essence is when 4 or 5 people from different countries working in other countries they have not been born in or not been studying in and unite together in one location and progress important questions. This is the essence. And this is what the community does. And this is how we can have an impact all together. There are a dozen ways to participate in our community. You're all members. You joined the community by becoming involved with InnoEnergy. So you can attend all the things. But the community does not build itself. A network does not build itself. We need people that are committed. We need people that want to go beyond and grow personally. And this is why we have the representative program. The representative program is our framework to help you become the best versions of yourselves. We can teach you, we can teach each other how to tackle the relevant challenges of the world by growing each other, making us stronger, and turning us into leaders. And this, for me very personally, is the purpose of the community. We are here to turn each other into leaders and to make each other stronger. Then we stand a good chance in changing the world for the better. Thank you very much. If you're interested in that, just after the event, talk to us. There are actually a few of the representatives already among you. I would like all that are representatives in this room to quickly stand up for a second so you can see their faces. Please be free. Please, all representatives, briefly stand up. I don't see so much. Yep, so remember the faces, approach them, approach me, and we can make you into one of us. So, let's close with a big guy saying something nice about us. Who knows him? Hands, show me your hands. Who knows this guy? His name is Maroš Šefčovič. He's Vice President of the European Commission and responsible for the Energy Union. The Energy Union is the most impactful policy project of the European Commission of this decade. And it is intended to unite Europe over the energy system. Unite the energy systems. And we met him. And he's saying that it's people like us that can make this change. He's saying that, well, you guys actually stand a chance in achieving the objective. And I guess he's right. Okay, let's come to the main part of today. We've assembled companies in all stages, in all sizes, that are active in sustainable energy here today, this evening, with you, for you. There are 6 companies in total. You can see the tables here. They're active in different fields. In the next few minutes, what we will do is we will start spreading out, uniting around these companies and working on those challenges. We'll practice today how it can start to have an impact. We will work on their cases, real cases. This is not some mock-up. These are real issues of those companies and startups. We will work on them, we'll share back the impact, and we'll start our journey today. So, logistics. 6 companies, 6 groups. Relatively simple math. What we want to ask you is to not concentrate too much around one company. Please, 25 people per group max. Be so nice and see that the groups are evenly distributed. The case challenge will start by a 5 minutes presentation of the company, then 5 minutes presentation of their case. Then you will be given the handouts to read deeper in the background and into the case. And then you have 30 minutes to work on the case in your subgroups of 5 people. Here I would like to encourage you to not choose the people you know. Working with people you know is easy. Everyone can do that. I would like to really encourage you to choose people you do not know, you've never worked with. Learn how to work with people that you've never worked with. That's a big asset. You can tell that in the job interview if you like. After the 30 minutes, each subgroup in the different, each team in the different groups will have 1 minute to share back to the case owner, the company representative, the results. And here's the challenge. You only have your voice. We will not give you anything, no PowerPoint, nothing to write down. You will have your 3-4 headlines, your 3 main takeaways to answer the case, and you will tell them openly in their faces. You can, of course, take notes, but you should not take visual aids during your final presentation. 1 minute per team, sharing back your results of that case. Afterwards, we'll return to the big group like here, and we'll get some impressions of how it was from both sides. What do you think? Are you excited? Yeah. Okay. Here you see the 6 companies that we have here today. Companies of all stages and sizes and focus areas, but all active in the sustainable energy industry. So please start now by spreading out to the different tables. Let's make this quick and smooth, please. And make sure that your groups are 25 people max. Thank you. Really great. I'm impressed how easy it is to come up with reasonably good ideas in extremely condensed time. And if you like, make the thought experiment for yourself. If you had 2 weeks or 4 weeks to answer that question, would your results be significantly better? So, moving on. Before we move on to a short coffee break, we are having our innovation talk for this evening. And I'm really honored and proud to have him here, Anton Eckerström, the Business Development Director of Northvolt, one of the most hot startups in Europe right now, aiming to build Europe's biggest gigafactory in Sweden, right here. And he will share with us his personal growth story. Please give a roaring applause for Anton Eckerström. Woo!
Okay, I don't know what, it seems like this mic is the one I'm using. Is that correct? Yeah, it is. And my presentation should come soon. First, I want to give great ideas. It's super good to be here. It's super great to hear all of your, ideas going from, very innovative to already in the change to you're just new thinking the whole thing. I also want to start with an applause for InnoEnergy, first for hosting this event, but also for supporting great startup like ourselves. So please, an applause for InnoEnergy. Woo! So I was presented with that boring picture, and I tried to go a bit more fake bookish in this session. I was thinking about all the way to Snapchat, but I'll save that for later if it's okay. So I'm going to talk a bit about change. I'm of course going to touch on Northvolt, but also sort of my experience in going into Northvolt and what took me there. So basically I grew up there. You see the green dot in the middle of Sweden, middle of nowhere. I grew up on a farm up there. Pretty outdoorsy person. Loved to fish, and you saw that on the picture. And then I left sort of the countryside where I had my first innovation spirits. I used to tie, fishing flies, and also did, kind of a worm farming stuff where I sold worms to local fishermen and had all that early innovation experience. It was a bad business, so I hope I had some learnings from it. I actually studied here at KTH, and my last experience on this stage was for the, you had these student theater things. So it's pretty scary walking up here again, and then you're going to hear commandos and stuff being screamed, but I hope you spare me from that today. Studied mechanical engineering here, and with renewable energy technology as a master. And I learned a lot here. I mean, as you are here this evening, you have so many of your colleagues back home watching your movies, and you're here driving change, which is huge. I try to engage myself in a lot of things here, actually not in these kind of forums. I did a lot of other outside activities, and a lot of that experience have brought me to where I am today. I got so many friends, and all are innovative. So I hope you all take the opportunity to gather, to get your friends all over Europe and the world, and you can use that truly in the future. So I was finished at KTH. I wondered, what do I want to do? I had similar ideas to what I've heard here tonight, and I basically wanted to change the way we do in Europe and to drive this new, carbon emission-free society. And then I was thinking, so what are the big mega trends that I want to engage myself in? And the grid is of course one of them, and I wanted to go for it. I had all these management consultant roles, popping up, but I picked to go with ABB. And I went into their graduate trainee program. And in that program, you do sort of rotations. And maybe robotics is the way to go, or maybe I want to work more on sort of the grid side of it. So I ended up working with FACTS, which is sort of STATCOM and reactive power support to keep the grid stable. And I started in Västerås, but I pretty quickly moved over to the US and was based in Raleigh, where I basically have a lot of business on the West Coast with PG&E, who had big gas leakage and problems with stability and both frequency and voltage support in the network. So worked a lot with them to improve that situation, and also we're a lot up in Alaska to help Chugach Electric, where they have a big hydro facility and just one connection down to the main city, and that sort of, they had a lot of issues on that line. And by coincidence, doing this hard work over there, I managed to meet with an innovator, Peter Carlson, who back then was at Tesla. And he'd been there for 5 years and was just stepping out of the company, and I was sort of in the same California network, but supporting the grid instead. He had this, he had looked for a number of years for Tesla on okay, so we've now made an expensive car that we proved our case, and now we need to make it mainstream, and we need to cut the cost of this car by 50%. So they looked at the car and they basically said that, okay, it's pretty feasible in all components, but batteries is really tricky. So how do we make a component made in huge factories already in a fully automated process and then cut the cost of that by half? So that led them to the Nevada Gigafactory. And by the time of the launch of Model X, he basically stepped out, and he thought he was going to do tech investments and sort of support the European community and all of these electric startups. But it was also approached, I mean, InnoEnergy was an early supporter in sort of, we need to drive change in Europe and we want to bring this concept to Europe. So he asked me if I could join that journey, and I have now worked for Northvolt for a year. And I'll come back to a bit what Northvolt does, but it's been an incredible journey, meeting over 100 of Europe's biggest producers and future users of batteries, I think. Come back to batteries because it's just one mean of energy storage. I think many of you pointed that out in the sessions, and it's really important. I want to start showing sort of a movie that we made on this change, because it's super important that we continue to drive change, that we question change, and I think young people like us are the best advocator of it, and we need to make sure to both go into the big corporations and drive it as entrepreneurs there, but also when it's feasible, step out and sort of do it in another venue to catalyze the change. So I'll show a video here of which I think is really true. I don't know if you can help me to start it, but I'm not a computer scientist, but it seems that we have a problem here. Okay, maybe we can come back to it, or do you think you want to try again? Okay. Yeah, that was it. Okay, let's try at the end. So let's skip through it. Basically, it's a movie, showing how stubborn changes can be, and finally it just happens, and then it's a good experience. We'll come back to it. But basically, we want to transform the way we use energy, and we have a great challenge in Europe to sort of lower our carbon emissions, and that resides back to both solving the grid issue with renewables. But as we see it, it's also a storage component that become very important here. So we need storage and we need renewable sources to change the grid. And when the grid has changed, we can basically electrify a lot of our products and industrial uses to sort of go to an electrified society where we have a lower carbon footprint. And as we see ourselves, we're sort of a catalyst of that change. And I think this quote is just great, where Northvolt is basically enabling the future of energy. We're producing a boring battery cell, but we hope that that can drive a lot of innovation in other spaces. And I hope many of you engage yourself in the journey of energy storage and use these applications and these products that we will produce. But a battery will do for the electricity supply chain what refrigeration did to our food supply chain. And if you think of it, it's very true that looking at how we used food back in the days before refrigeration was very different. And now we have the ability to store and resell food. And at the grid, we're basically adding a new component of storage, where traditional means of solving the grid issue have been demand response and a sort of flexible production and also interconnection of the system. But now we're just adding a tool in the toolbox, which is to store it in time. And I don't think that many utilities and power companies know how to work with this component. It will take a number of years before you get into the toolbox, you know how to simulate it and use it. And also it will take a time for the technology to mature and cost to be there where it needs to be. This is what we're doing, and this is actually what our facility would look like in Skellefteå. So right now we're in a site selection process, and we have 2 sites left. One is 1 hour west of Stockholm in Västerås, and one is 1 hour of flight north to Skellefteå. So it's pretty huge. It's a scale play, and I'll come back to why you need to have scale. But one of these blocks is basically 120 meters in this side and 850 meters on that end. So it's a number of soccer fields in each of these facilities. And you really need to go big to hit this industry and to lower cost of producing battery cells. And that's not the only mean we're going into. I think this is also a very true thing. I know there are many storage techniques out there, and I'm not saying that battery will solve it all. It's one piece of the puzzle. I think that where you can use batteries, it's actually a very good mean of storing energy with low losses from generation to usage, basically. It doesn't fit in all applications, and you have seasonal fluctuations that you need to handle, and you have different technology that fits different solutions. And you're all smart, so you probably argue on all of that numbers, and it's frequently changes, but I think you get the idea of sort of the scale. So for example, the auto industry is right now proven to be able to have a car that's equally performant with distance and in price as a normal car. And then it makes a lot of sense to use a battery rather than producing hydrogen and using hydrogen. But I'm sure that hydrogen and biofuel will fit many other applications very well. I mean, heavy transport is one other sector that is really not truly solved yet. So if you look at the market, I mean, right now we're in sort of a projection of the market. Where will it go? We don't basically use any batteries in Europe right now, and we have literally 0 production in Europe. So this is what we see, and as I told you, I've been out talking about this a lot with all the companies. And I think really the auto industry is driving the change. So just, if you look at the big ones in Europe, you have the Wolfsburg company, and they are basically out there to source 150 gigawatt hour to 2025 for themselves. So that's more than what we have estimated, but I don't think they will be as successful as they think either. You have companies like BMW and Daimler and JLR and Volvo all also driving change, and all of them could easily consume our entire factory, and you saw the size of it. And then you think, why are these companies not doing this themselves? And I think it's a lot, if you're a car manufacturer in Europe, you have a huge legacy in factory and in knowledge. Your differentiating factor is that you can build a hugely efficient drivetrain with the engine, and you can create a great experience in the car. But what happens now is that all of that legacy is removed. You remove the engine, you remove the drivetrain, you're going to get in connectivity, self-driving, you're going to sort of transform your workforce to the new era, you're going to reconstruct your factories for a new need, and that's basically the reason they're not going after the battery piece themselves. They see this as a component similar to a piston head in the engine today, and they basically need support in driving this change. And on the EU level, they're super afraid that, I mean, if we make this shift, and you have newcomers in Asia that don't have the legacy of transforming the business, and you have all of the battery production in Asia, which is 40% the cost of making the car, what will make Europe successful in that transformation if you don't always, if we don't focus on the battery component of this and own that problem for ourselves. And I think Bo pointed out earlier that energy is actually driving part of that in EU as well, to put a strategy to actually move ahead. What happened in the battery industry that we have always tried to invent ourselves ahead in Europe. So we have a great research community around batteries, But making something work on a lab scale and making it work in those huge facilities that just spits out batteries like a machine gun is a very different thing. And we believe we want to go there with proven technology and bring the platform there, and then have that as a basis and an ecosystem to drive innovation forward. And I think we're starting to get our message through in EU. And as you can see here, there's a huge undersupply even with our factory in EU up to 2025. I focused a lot on the automotive, but I think the energy storage is increasingly interesting. You currently hear a lot about the pilots that utilities are constructing, and that's kind of how they drive it. But if you look at the cost of these things, they're tremendously behind the efficiencies that the car industry have assembling these things. And I think just focusing a bit on that problem and make these OEMs and the equipment vendors to produce it themselves rather than sourcing it from Asia will basically enable a price point where a lot of business case will make sense. As I said, we're producing a battery, and I don't know if you have AA batteries at home or something. It's not too different from that. The first product will be a cylindrical 2170, similar to what Tesla is using, and basically a lot of the big existing players like Samsung and LG and Panasonic and Sony are also going after that form factor now. So basically what's different, I mean, if you're going to change a large industry that have a big legacy and have huge factories up there, you need to do something different. You can't do it the same as they do it. And we're basically going to use a cutting edge technology, enable that with process innovation and have a much stricter process control than any other. We're going to use on the structural cost advantage to use the vertical integration and especially the cheap and carbon-free energy of Sweden and also the scale to drive costs down on that technology. And then basically make the world's greenest battery. I know there's been a huge argument now on whether the transition to electric cars will be sustainable. One part of it is the grid, so where do you charge from? Another part is how much carbon dioxide do you use when you create the battery. And basically you create between 70 to 80 kilowatt hour of electricity or energy to produce 1 kilowatt hour of battery. And if you look at sort of China or Japan where you produce them today, that energy is not coming from renewable sources. So basically when Peter started this project, he had looked at the whole Europe and he said, okay, so if I'm going to do this somewhere, it's probably Iceland, Norway, or Sweden where we have the right carbon footprint price on energy to make a difference. And then we ended up in Sweden. It's part of EU and it's not Iceland, so it's kind of in the center for logistic reasons. So I talked about these roadmaps, and then this is probably, I don't know how much you know about batteries, but there's a lot of different chemistries in these lithium-ion batteries. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to jump on the current version of the battery. So we're going to have basically the same performing product as a lot of the others at the same point in time. So we're not going to be too different on the battery cell, rather that we're going to have a really well-performing cell. Building these batteries is a sensitive chemistry. It's like going to build a semiconductor factory. You can't just do it in any room. You need process control. I mean, humidity is the worst enemy of batteries. So it is quite a process innovation to get there. You also need to think about the industry a bit differently. So in a battery, you basically have the mining and refinery, which is the metals you use. Nickel is one example. And then you basically purify it and you create nickel hydroxide. You get it into active materials, so you build the characteristics and the particle sizes you need on that. You coat it on electrodes, and you assemble it into a battery, and perhaps you also put it in a modular pack into a car. So if you look sort of at the Tesla Gigafactory, they start the process here. And then they have the ambition to go here, but they realize that we need a lot of water to do these metal processes, and they just built a factory in Nevada in the desert. Probably not a good idea. And then you can look even further. So creating the active materials that you do here is also very important. We're going to go up here for some of the materials. We're not going to be a mining company, but we're going to work in a pretty other way with them. So looking at the battery today, I mean, for a Tesla battery, you mine the nickel in New Caledonia, and that's an island, and you use basically only, you burn oil and stuff to get the electricity to power the mine. You then ship it up to Eramet in France, where you do the nickel refining. You ship it back from France to Sumitomo in Japan, where you sort of create the active material. And then Buffs Toda, where one of our founders was the CEO before joining, they basically buy the active materials on both nickel and other sides, and they make the active materials, so the material with the characteristic of building a battery. And then they ship it over to Panasonic in Japan, actually, and then over to Panasonic in the Gigafactory to coat it on the material and create it. And you can see that this process is a really polluting process, and it also binds capitals for very long times. So if you instead can sort of source nickel from the mining process we have up in the Nordics in Finland and Sweden, and then get it directly into the factory, that will save you a lot of time and binding of capital, but it also makes you available to source from any source. So if Tesla is going to continue to produce the battery and they basically want to shift from Buffs Toda, they can't do it because then they produce another product. Whereas Northvolt could potentially source the nickel from any source because we own the quality from the upstream, downstream. You probably heard about a lot of these cobalt issues, etc. But we will be able to own the source of our materials in a totally different way and control it. I mean, the carbons, well-screened batteries, no one talks about it today, but I think it will be super important as we go forward. I mean, there is no gold standard in batteries today because all of them are manufactured in the same way in the same kind of countries. But we think by establishing this, we can create sort of a gold standard and push them to also think about the circular way of using batteries with recycling, but also to manufacture them in a more sustainable way using renewable energy sources. Today you can have renewable energy sources and you can build it in China as well, but you will not have it at the cost we have in Sweden, where we basically have a really strong power grid supporting that. Our factory will consume 300 megawatt of continuous power, or 2 to 3% of the electricity generation in Sweden. So it's a pretty huge factory. I think this is also an important question. That's not, this is the carbon footprint you would come out with a car. So you have a legacy of 3.7 ton of carbon dioxide, where a Northvolt process in Sweden would only be 0.5. And then if you put it in China, in that grid, you can see the difference just from the electricity consumed in producing the battery. We talk a lot about this, and I think you should bring this thought with you, that driving this change today, almost all companies are stuck in a solution. They buy a solution from a small company that knows how to assemble battery cells. They don't do literally anything themselves. Not even the big automakers is really making all the modules and packs themselves. They source it. And I think we started this with sort of thinking that a lot of companies would be up at the chemistry level. I mean, some of the companies have a 40 plus chemists that work with batteries, but many do not. So in order to change this and to get the cost down where it needs to be to transform Europe, we really need to help them walk this ladder. And that's what we do. And I hope you guys also will do it in the future, where you come out and you help these companies to sort of innovate themselves up this hill. And you probably saw a recent, we went into a partnership with ABB, where I come from, so it's back where it all started. But I want to sort of give the perspective here that the day before we announced on Tuesday, they announced that they bought part of the GE for 26 billion SEK, which is a tremendous M&A process from their end. If you looked, we published this, and we had a press release with their CEO in Sweden. And it was the first time the media met this person after the Monday announcement. There wasn't a single question about the large acquisition from GE. If you look at the web the same day and you start to see, if you search for ABB and you saw the hits, the first page was none of the GE stuff. It was all about Northvolt. And if you talk to the ABB management team and you see the internal web, but also the highest ranks was this new innovative thing where we drive change. It's not the old legacy part where we just buy something that worked for a number of years. So bring that with you, that, I mean, even though this is a new project, a small startup, and what you can really do in this field is being innovative and drive change, and take that mentality with you to do it. I mean, it's a tremendous support from ABB now, just that because it hit so much. It was 1,000 articles written the same day that we announced it. And I mean, we're looking for a ton of persons to join Northvolt and to be in the same journey as we're doing. You can find more details online, but I mean, we need a lot of talented person. And I hope really that not all of you is coming to Northvolt, but rather to go out to this big corporation that need to change. Because if I don't have a good speaking partner on the other end driving this change, it will never happen. And that's what I did for 3 years with ABB before joining Northvolt. Should we try to go back to the video and see if it works now? Because I really want to show it, sort of an ending statement.
Actually, we found it on YouTube. Shall we give this a shot?
Yeah, try it.
Change is a stubborn thing. We can wish for, dream of, and imagine the future. But in the real world, change won't listen. When science proves it's absolutely necessary, change doesn't know how. When technology makes it possible, change finds it risky. When everyone agrees and policies are in place, change worries about cost. In the real world, change doesn't care. Until the new is better than the old, on every level. When carbon-free energy can be stored and distributed with higher quality, at lower cost, and made more sustainable, when we make it truly available, then and only then, change flicks the switch to the future we imagined, where wind and the sun powers our everyday, where electric vehicles outperform traditional cars, where transportation needs no oil and all of society runs free of carbon emissions.
So with that movie, I just want to say thank you all. I'll be here if you want to talk about it. I focused a bit too much on Northvolt, I would say, but it's a big part of my journey in driving change. And I hope all of you find your forum for driving change. And once again, InnoEnergy is doing a great job in making you all be here and think about these topics. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Anton. A small token of our appreciation for you. Thank you a lot for your time.
Thank you very much, guys.
Wow. Before we go to the break and plunder the fika buffet we have over there, we have some information for you, some brochures about community projects that we have done in the past. We're going to speak about them after the break, but for you to familiarize yourself with the faces of the people that are actually driving change and what they have been doing, please feel free to grab some of those brochures and take them with you so that we can dive in after the 15 minutes break. Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy the cafe, 15 minutes.